Alison was a proud mother, hugely successful businesswoman, was rarely talked about herself, was always doing other things for others in the community. She was selfless.
Sean's wife, Alison, discovered she had pancreatic cancer at the end of 2020. Her cancer was so advanced she was unable to receive treatment, and sadly she died in January 2021, aged just 54. Her story is not unique. Pancreatic cancer is often picked up at a late stage when surgery or chemotherapy are no longer options, or it's spread to other parts of the body. There's currently no routine test to look for early signs. So whilst it's the 10th most common cancer in the UK, survival rates lag far behind many of those for other cancers. Here at Southampton Clinical Trials Unit, they've just started to evaluate a blood test that might be able to detect pancreatic cancer in its earliest stages. But if it's such a silent killer, where on earth do you find likely candidates?
Alison, during the summer of 2020, had some mild indigestion symptoms. They gradually morphed into autumn 2020 in what you would call classic diabetes symptoms. She had a diabetes test and she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in October 2020.
It seems cancer can interfere with the way that the pancreas produces insulin. So, as in Alison's case, it often presents as type 2 diabetes.
Quite often we see people coming to our clinic with pancreatic cancer, and when we go through their history, we find that they have got diabetes, which has been recently diagnosed usually within the 3 to 6 months prior to the diagnosis of pancreatic cancer.
So the unit here has been signing up volunteers who've been newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes to take the test. All they need to do is give a blood sample, which is processed here before being sent off to San Diego for full analysis by a biotech company called ClearNote Health. But how does the test work?
We leverage the fact that when cancer develops in the body, it induces chemical changes in our genome. Those DNA epigenomic changes essentially modify the letters in our DNA. So in the lab behind me, we have robots that you see that essentially measure precisely those changes. And we couple that with DNA sequencing. And once we're able to sequence, we can understand where they occur in our genes and in our genome. We then use artificial intelligence to put together a predictor.
Once the analysis is completed, the test result is a binary yes or no.
It essentially informs the physician whether a patient's blood contains the early signals of pancreatic cancer or not. The test report in hand, the physician can make the decision about whether additional diagnostic tests are needed.
There are several companies out there doing these types of liquid biopsy tests, but ClearNote's approach here is different. It's focusing on one particular cancer with a very low survival rate. That's why the trial here to find a reliable test that works and is worth the investment is vital.
All of these trials that we're running are so important to make sure that any technology that's coming through, you have to be so careful to make sure that actually they don't end up doing more harm than good. There's huge amounts of work that happens about, the health economics around the early diagnosis of cancer. So bringing together not just the lab analysis, but also the impact that it has on society and the cost is really important, and bringing all of that evidence together to then enable screening committees to make a decision about whether they should be adopted.
So if the test is proven to be effective, it could be a game changer. So long term, if you find a way of being able to identify the cancer earlier, what do you think this is going to do for survival rates?
I think it's the key player, earlier diagnosis. And the reason is, although treatment, modalities of treatment, chemotherapy and precision medicine, all these are important. The difference is that with early diagnosis, you can give them cure.
What we're seeing here is a real direction of travel in terms of the aim for early diagnosis in cancer. And it's not just pancreatic cancer that you're looking at here, is it?
No, so we're also working with 2 multi-cancer tests, one for 10 cancers and one for 12 cancers. Because what we want to do is be in a position where in the future we can have blood tests that can be performed in the community. So we have that really early stage diagnosis of patients who would need further investigation for signs of cancer.
If any of those taking part in this study do get a positive result for pancreatic cancer, they're fast-tracked for an MRI scan and then further tests. Now, this is just a pilot, but if successful, the team will then move on to a much larger phase involving many more patients. If an earlier diagnosis for the disease can be found, it will no doubt have a profound effect.
What it would have done for us was certainly buy us more time, allow her to have chemotherapy. Potentially, if it was diagnosed at the diabetes stage, that's where maybe we could have got more time as a family, maybe more months, maybe even years, and more time to make memories together.